Welcome to This Month in Cyber for January and really for the year of 2021. We intend to do this each month as we have done for the last 5 years or so. Unfortunately, this month we have a little more to chat about than most months. Not going to talk any faster. Not going to just going to try and digest what we normally digest. We obviously have to digest to some degree and spend some time on the Solarwinds breach and what it means to you. We've got a little bit of a stay safe mentality, and we'll be discussing some items that have occurred in January that would make you want to stay safe, as the expression goes. Then we want to talk a little bit about ransomware and backups to kind of conclude things. Got a mix of stories in here, as you can imagine, since we didn't have a December discussion. Some of the stories actually began in December when the Solarwinds breach began to unfold. So FireEye was kind of first to kind of come on the scene and say, hey, you know, someone has accessed our tools. And FireEye, as many of you may know, is a security organization. And their red team tools used to penetrate organizations and determine where there might be some vulnerabilities. The entire tool set was breached and stolen, and everyone was like, oh no. And it would allow unauthorized third-party users to abuse these tools, was their statement, now that those were out in the wild. Well, unbeknownst to them, the event was actually bigger than that. Well, not only were their tools unfolded, but in fact, the whole SolarWinds breach had occurred. Many of you may have read, various articles regarding this. It's not my intention to completely recap the entire event, but certainly want to put out some salient nuggets. So, first of all, the event is called SolarGate if you're Microsoft, or Sunburst if you're FireEye. So it has a couple names. In general, we're just going to call it the SolarWinds event. 80% of the identified victims are located in the United States. 20% are spread over 7 other countries. 44% of the victims were in IT. 18% were government agencies. And it began on December 8th when a company was able to access some of FireEye's internal systems, and that's kind of where some things were seen. On December 15th, Microsoft was actually warning CrowdStrike that there was some unusual activity on their Office 365. And on December 23rd, CrowdStrike indeed made a large announcement regarding the breach and what had occurred. And then things really continued to unfold from just prior to Christmas. So all of this kind of goes back, though, in time to last year, when things probably had been penetrated in the March timeframe. And some of the impact, FireEye, Microsoft, U.S. Treasury Department, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Department of Commerce, Department of State, Department of Health, National Institute of Health, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, or CISA. A lot of dangerous places were impacted. So in general, SolarWinds is now stating that about 18,000 of its customers were running essentially a Trojanized version of Orion. So this is a SolarWinds Orion product, not to be confused with any of SolarWinds' other products. The Orion product code had some signatures, certificates, and essentially code was injected into their software, which then was, as part of a patch release, was installed out onto a number of key systems and allowed for a backdoor hack. And various malware strains came through this entry point of some breached Orion software from SolarWinds. So, as mentioned, a lot of countries were impacted. Notably, Russia in the upper corner has no incidents of this, and indeed is where a lot of the organizations are pointing that this manifested from. As a result of this, as things kind of unfold, you'll see various discussions about Sunburst. Sunspot was kind of the first item, which was really distributed broadly to kind of find out who had the Orion strain that was used to insert the bad code into the software. Then Sunburst was what was the push of Orion, I'll call it malware Orion, into the 18,000 customers. And then from there, they used something called Teardrop, which was running PowerShell payloads and leaving very little forensic evidence that even other systems had difficulty detecting. And then just recently, they've discovered something called Raindrop, which is very similar to Teardrop. And I'll leave it to the pundits to kind of go get under the hood dramatically, but you'll hear references to a lot of that. I think what's most concerning probably for us as kind of the quote unquote lay people is the malicious cloud access. So the U.S. National Security Agency has warned that a group behind the Orion supply chain really was interested in accessing victim systems, including stealing Azure Active Directory credentials. So Azure Active Directory is, as we all know, the basis for our Office 365 subscriptions. And certainly we're always attuned to things that are happening in our Office 365 tenant. So this kind of reminds me back from September, and you'll see this story's late, but I warned back then of a story, and so this is an exact slide of how a federal agency had our 365 creds compromised, which led to looking at attachments, digging around for other people and other information within that agency, installing a backdoor, and ultimately malware and exfiltration of data. It's exactly essentially what has happened, except now it's happened across 18,000 organizations. So not in a good place, just kind of brought that story forward only just to let you know that, this is on rinse and repeat, if you will, from September. And now here we are unfolding things in December and January. So let's take a look at some of the ramifications of this, and these are just things that have come out as of recent. So Krebs is reporting U.S. Court records were exposed. So this is the judiciary maintains something called a case management and electronic case files in a system called CMECF, because they couldn't think of a better acronym, I guess. But the documents are normally sealed, right? And you can imagine documents that are sealed are meant to be sealed, right? You could have witness intellectual property, trade secrets, confidential informants, all of that. Much of that information is likely in others' hands and can be dabbled out, sold, and discussed over time. So at this point, no further documents are actually being sealed. If they are being sealed, they're not being uploaded into the system any longer. They're being done by hand until obviously further precautions can be taken. U.S. Department of Justice, just that little organization with 100,000 employees, including FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshal's Office, basically said that they have 100,000 employees, and they said that 3% or 3,000 of their mailboxes were accessed. Okay. What could that mean, right? FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshal's Service, you can only imagine. They discovered this breach on the day before Christmas, and this was 2 weeks after the original breach was discovered on December 8th. So bad things coming from a mail perspective on those networks. Other ramifications, we've got currently a website called Solar Leaks that is hosting some of the artifacts from these breaches. Microsoft code, source code. There's no indication as exactly what source code it is, but presumably Windows source code is out there and available for sale for $600,000. If it's fake source code, it's certainly good source code according to the article. Cisco has some items that are out there that are selling for $300,000, not trivial figures. And FireEye source code for some of those tools that are mentioned are $50,000. Microsoft source code, Microsoft is admitting that there probably is some source code that got leaked. They don't have the ability to modify or make any changes to source code, so they're not entirely concerned about it, but that's their initial statement. Cisco's is a little more interesting. Cisco, it's in addition to source code, one of the things that Cisco is concerned about is what's called Cisco Bug Tracker. And I'll read you. The Cisco exposure is troubling because it includes internal bug tracking data. So if it's real, and no confirmation yet, the attackers would directly know all the vulnerabilities that Cisco themselves have identified in their own products, but haven't fixed yet. So you can imagine that would be dangerous. So still unfolding ramifications there. And then, not to be outdone, just this morning, it was released from Mimecast that effectively Mimecast Solarwinds accessed and exfiltrated encrypted customer service accounts that establish a connection from Mimecast to on-prem and cloud services. Essentially, the statement is, if you have SolarWinds, or if you were leveraging Mimecast, there's a good potential that hackers had access to LDAP, Azure AD, Exchange Web Services, POP, and SMTP authenticated delivery. They came out with this, they first disclosed issues on January 12th, but indeed that was with a different portion of their organization. This indeed indicates that email system and email routing was likely affected also, and that just came out this morning. So again, unfolding incidents, a lot to take in. We know it is bad. We know that it will continue to have unfolding stories. So let's move on into what to do. SolarWinds, the Department of Homeland Security, has come up with a tool that is helping organizations detect if they were impacted directly by this breach. One of the ways that they can tell is that breadcrumbs that are left are some of the PowerShell scripts, made calls, and made changes, and made app registrations and things like that in Office 365. So they came up with a tool, as noted on the left-hand side, that is designed, it's called Sparrow, and the tool is designed to look for 12 indicators of compromise as to whether you were a victim of this attack. We are very accustomed to and have a tool, Peters & Associates, for looking for indicators of compromise. And some of these indicators are pretty common things, right? We're looking for things like foreign mailbox logins and mailbox forwarding, auditing and making sure that it's turned on in mailboxes, and making sure that the proper number of admins are in there and that someone didn't get inserted into your admin account, admin groups, and so forth. That process we have for doing that is called Security Review for Office 365. We talk about it probably every month. Many of our customers are on this service today. Others are available to run a trial of this service. One of the things we did is we looked at the PowerShell scripts that Department of Homeland Security was suggesting that get run, and they were also into the Sparrow tool. We effectively folded the Sparrow tool indicators of compromise into our own tool. So here's what that kind of looks like. I'm not going to dive into a ton of detail. You can imagine that this would be an output that is analyzed by one of our analysts on a daily basis to look for, indeed, whether it be foreign mailbox logins and things that we had looked at before, or you'll notice a number of the items that are located in green there. We'll say CISA Sparrow, and those are the indicators that were PowerShell scripts that output to log files that need analysis, and it's done so as part of this tool. And then we try to put that in a green, yellow, or red status with regards to the findings. Again, app registrations or strange logins, application permissions, things of that nature. And this is a joint effort in that we're producing the logs, we're analyzing to the degree we can. In some cases, there's findings where we'll need to review that with the customer to say, hey, are these legitimate applications within your environment for these users, and so forth. So it's a joint effort, and we're helping try to solve this for some of our customers. And if you're interested in our Office 365 service, we certainly will point to it here at the end of the presentation. So that's kind of the SolarWinds. There's a lot to take in, a lot of ramifications still unfolding. There's a great deal of lawsuits and additional information I think that will be coming out in coming weeks, months, as organizations learn about this. We are staying on top of this, not only from a Microsoft perspective, but we are going to be evaluating impacts and what should be done from a Cisco, Mimecast, and we're kind of tracking and internally having conversations with our customers through communications and additional webinars potentially around what should be done. All right, so on to another topic. Let's end the idea of staying safe. So as Mr. Krebs does often, and this Krebs, by the way, is not to be confused with CISA's Krebs, was no longer a part of Department of Homeland Security, but the Krebs name is not related. But this blog gentleman writes about the security impacts of the patches. Typically, Microsoft Patch Day comes out, and he has an article on it. And there were 80 vulnerabilities this month that were provided through Microsoft's patches for Patch Tuesday. So a fair amount of patches. 10 of them are related as critical. In particular, there's a couple CVEs that are noted there on the page. 2021-1647, which was a problem with Windows Defender. The good news is Windows Defender is patched typically out of cycle. So in addition to Patch Tuesday, for Defender, there's Patch Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, right? It's continuously patched. So most likely that did not impact many organizations and was probably naturally patched, but certainly something you'll want to look into. It was an exploit, zero-day exploit on Defender that basically any file scans may have provided a vulnerability through the CV. And then the other one, 1660, was a remote code execution flaw, which remote code execution is usually bad, right? Where someone can actually send code and have it be executed through the Windows OS. It was ranked a 8.8 on a scale of 10 in terms of danger. So certainly a high need to have the patches from this month installed as soon as possible. We have some good news as we head here into 2021. There is no more Flash Player updates because Adobe has retired the browser Flash plugin. And so Microsoft Cycle basically has been removed from all Microsoft browsers. That said, I bet dollars to donuts that you have Flash somewhere within your environment. Do you know if you have Flash? Do you know if you patch it? This is part of the inventory and patching process you certainly would want to look into. If possible, eliminate Flash from your environment. If not possible, then update Flash to the latest. Flash was notoriously would have 2, 3, 5 vulnerabilities per month for the last 3 years. So Flash players really need to be updated. They're very problematic. And the last part of that this article talked about, which is certainly insightful, is Windows 10. A lot of people think in Windows 10, by its very name, Windows 10 has had about 12 versions of Windows 10 that are out there. And at this point, as you kind of look at the versions that have, through the version history here, those items at the very bottom, 20H2 and 2004 or 20H1, those are really the two versions that will be fully supported after May. You have a few more months here for the other version, 1909, to be supported. But in general, keeping up to date on Windows levels, Windows 10 levels, is extremely important also. The code not only is not supported, but can contain security vulnerabilities and things inherent to the Windows 10 code. So we'd ask you to take a look at your Windows 10. We have a blog that we've written on how to verify what versions of Windows 10 you have within your environment. There's a PowerShell script that can be run to detect it as to how they're registered into Active Directory if you have no other means to do it, and certainly be looking for anything that's 1903 or earlier. Another area of staying safe, there was a story this month about that the FBI has had their second now bulletin about vishing. Vishing is just like it sounds. It's a takeoff of phishing, but it's actually using voice. Something about human nature tends to trust human voice more than an email. Maybe it's good training on the email side, but human voice from whether it's impersonating or is otherwise enacting like someone of authority from your organization. They try to trick the employees into logging into a phishing web page. Okay, so direct your browser to the following site. Oftentimes it will be to a fake VPN site that looks like the VPN that they use. The credentials are then used as a tactic to log into the real VPN as the user, and then obviously try to do damage from within there. So vishing is usually combined with fake web pages, just like phishing is combined with web pages, and the FBI is seeing a dramatic increase in that in the last month. Oh, since I have more happy news, let's see. We've got email chain that's going around, basically looking at COVID vaccine supply chain. Their goal is also to harvest credentials for future access. I think in the first, we were seeing, and certainly I reported back in March, a lot of activity around fake websites that were being created with coronavirus or WHO or things of that nature as part of their URL address. And indeed, those are now coming to roost, where emails are directing people to those sites. And in particular, they're trying to look at the COVID vaccine and some of the excitement around that. Very similar to what they do when there's a hurricane or things of that nature. So just be ever mindful of some of the stories around this. And again, when you get these, when you get the PowerPoint deck or the blog afterwards, all the links to all the articles are here. And again, this one was just released just a few days ago in the Stay Safe arena. I would also say that SonicWall has an issue. There was a 0-day finding of in some of their remote access tools. The good news is this does not impact their firewall and other, I would say popular products. This was specifically the Secure Mobile Access or SMA 100 series and the Net Extender VPN client. So the Net Extender VPN client is pretty prolific out there in organizations. So SonicWall is not stating that this was directly linked to SolarWinds, but it was certainly implied. They said basically it was carried out by a highly sophisticated and it was similar to attacks that were provided against firms with critical infrastructure and security controls. So it sounds a lot like it's a manifestation of the SolarWinds group. The short-term resolution from SonicWall is to either not use Net Extender access, so no VPN access, or you have to whitelist the public IP address of the users that want to use the VPN until they can come up with a patch. So literally that is 2 or 3 days old there. I would remind everyone, just from endpoint security, this is something where we have a pretty mature practice that runs really from the user and training capabilities to the workstation and devices for patching and managed endpoint protection, all the way out to where are people traveling on the internet. I think one of the beauties of the SolarWinds incident, if we kind of go back to the first stories, is one of the first products that was blocking capability to have command and control servers calling home or looking at nefarious traffic was internet gateway security, right? And products like Umbrella or OpenDNS, those were designed to say, hey, that is strange conversation to a strange location. I'm not letting you do that, and or I'm alerting you to this traffic. So on December 8th, when things occurred, those that had Umbrella traffic were in a much better situation than those that didn't traffic protection. So it's things like internet gateway security that really have been a savior during the last 30, 45 days. A lot of other services there as we kind of walk through endpoint protection, but just know that as the volume of stories and effort needs to take place on your shoulders, know that you have a friend in the business, if you will, that can certainly help in this regard and offload some of it. All right, and last but not least, I wanted to chat about ransomware quickly. There were some tactics that slightly changed, I would say, here, or it got enhanced. Ransomware gangs have always had, and this might come as a surprise to you, they've always had large call centers. These are large multinational businesses, and they have full-fledged call centers. And these call centers had always been designed in the past maybe for calling you for like ransomware demands, for claiming that they're going to talk people into clicking on malware and things of that nature. But now they're actually, if they see activity where you're trying to get around their ransomware by restoring from backups, they'll actually call you and say, hey, we see that you're trying to recover from backups. I wouldn't do it. Otherwise, we'll raise our ransom, or we will launch another attack. So they're really kind of getting personal with regards to this and using their call centers to that advantage. So that's an interesting new tactic. Basically, the script goes something like this, quote unquote, we are aware of a third-party IT company, and you can imagine this either being read to you via automated or in some cases by a human that's part of the call center. We're aware of a third-party IT company working on your network. We continue to monitor and know what you are installing. We see SentinelOne antivirus on all your computers. You should know that it will not help. If you want to stop wasting your time and recover your data this week, we recommend you discuss this situation with us in the chat, or the problems with your network will never end. Other scary things, ransomware demands are obviously doubling in a certain amount of time. They'll claim that they're going to notify journalists of the breach, which ultimately they have done. They will leak sensitive documents out onto quote unquote leak sites if the companies don't pay. So all of this is being done to extract as much money as possible during the situation. Again, ransomware is kind of the end result. Oftentimes they've already stolen some of your data, and you need to determine, hey, if that data is out there, I need to A, make some notifications, B, I've got a business problem, things of that nature. So fair amount happening in the ransomware world, and it continues to evolve. Ransomware at schools. So during the March to June timeframe, certainly always goes up. And then there's a note here that in August and September, Department of Homeland Security noted that 57% of ransomware incidents involved K through 12 schools, meaning there was a lot of ransomware going towards schools in those months, right, in August and September when they're trying to open. Normally, it's around 28%. So, a 2 or 3x fold of in August and September for schools. The 5 most active ransomware groups are kind of listed there. I don't want to read them because I'll butcher the names, but certainly they're known. The last one there, Sudinokibi, is something that we have some experience with in recent months. We've had a number of customers that have been hit with ransomware, where we're being called in to evaluate, and that one seems to be pretty prolific within those environments. Indeed, they are asking for, they have ransoms. The ransoms do go up in a week. We have seen some of the call centers reach out, and keep in mind, all of this is with the OFAC rule. This is a story back from October, if you'll recall it. It's very difficult to pay ransoms nowadays, especially to foreign entities that are on our do not pay list. So it's kind of illegal to pay ransoms. So you're left with your backups or complete rebuild of your systems if you don't have a method, if your backups aren't working. And it's for this reason, and I'll kind of skip by that backups have become all that much more important. We certainly have always talked about, 3-2-1 guide, and that's been the age-old industry guide, but we've always added the +1 on there, which is keep one copy offline, air-gapped, however you want to think of it. This has become critical. We have a customer that has been recently very much appreciative of some features in their software that have been executed with Veeam and Exagrid. You'll find that there's certain little things that could be turned on to provide very inherent ransomware protection, including time locking and other things like that. So some things that you can do in this space, obviously have an incident response plan. We've chatted about that before. There's certainly some, in terms of the crawl, walk, run, there's some things that where we can get engaged either at a trial level or at an implementation level to help you uncover some of these issues. We have got some blogs that we've written recently. One of note is in the upper left. If you want a recap of kind of what happened with SolarWinds Orion, or if you want a link to our security review for Office 365 trial, or if you would like to just get on the service, see if you've been breached by the SolarWinds breach, we're certainly happy to run that with you. But we try to blog on that 2 or 3 times a week. And we've got some events coming up, again, with the ransomware being what it was. You'll notice on February 9th, we've got a discussion with Exagrid and Veeam. Predominantly is going to be around ransomware, and I think it would be wise for you to attend, either if you're a current customer or if you'd like to see what's happening in the protection ballpark. Data protection is certainly key for ransomware. I'd also like to remind you that we, in addition to doing this month in cyber, which we have on the 23rd next month, we've added this month in Microsoft Teams, where we're going to be doing a monthly review of new features, functions, tips, tricks, security elements of Teams as it's become a major collaboration tool. So with all of that, I appreciate everyone's time and attendance. I think we're right at time. I'm able to take any questions, but I think at this point, if you're interested and have to run, at least we got the content in, but hang on for questions if there are any.